Thank you. Yeah, it's not, oh, it's just connecting to audio. So if you could. It's like everybody's. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, perfect. Okay, it's 4:04. We're calling the meeting to order. I'll be, the mayor's asked me to chair this afternoon as he had a family issue come up and contacted me about 35-40 minutes ago, and may join us later in the meetings, but most likely will not, because he has been retained in town with the family concern. So we'll just proceed and go from there. We do have a quorum, and we have David Shore and Bruce McLaughlin, who are full committee members, and Glenn Dodd has been asked to join us today as an expert advisor. In addition to that, we for staff, we have Mr. Ron Miller, our acting CAO, CFO, and our controller, Mr. Joe Chirkoff, who we're very pleased to have join us today. So thank you so much. With that, call to order at 4:04, adoption of the agenda. Are there other items that we'd like to, the agenda is quite general, so I don't think there's going to be anything that we discuss that isn't going to fit. Is there anything specific that anyone would like to put on the agenda to raise specifically? I'd like to talk a little bit about online security potentially, and maybe ask a question about insurance if there's anything anything new on that.
I will say I had a very quick discussion with Ken on this. I'm more than willing to be supportive, but I would like the request to come from council to the finance committee.
Okay.
And then as a member of the finance committee, I will work with the finance committee and we'll do a report. And it'll go back. And the reason I'm conscious of that is I don't want to be considered a unpaid professional working directly for the municipality. I'm a committee member of the finance committee.
So really create that firewall.
Exactly.
Perfect. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so move adoption of the agenda then, so that item kind of went in the agenda and dealt with. Okay, perfect. Okay, moved, seconded. Okay, all those in favor? Carried. Okay, thank you. Approval of the minutes. We're trying to get all the minutes for previous meetings organized and hope to have those for our next meeting. Business arising from the minutes. No minutes, so that's where we are. So moving into discussion of the utilities, annual budget processes, staff, etc. So I can set over.
Sure. So what I'd like to do is we've basically got 80-90% through the budget. Where we're not yet comfortable enough to give the numbers out is the capital budget. I'm still waiting for basically the public works manager to give us a more detailed review of the capital budget. I think we talked about this before. Is prioritizing expenditures and justifying the expenditures. Joe is working with me on that right now. So I'm hoping, and we'd like to get the budget. I'm going to say the first 2 to 3 readings done, and probably not next council meeting, but the one right after. The budget should then, because there's going to be 2 public consultations and then of the 3 readings. And we want to get through this, let's just say right after the by-election. We're very close. If we don't get the capital budget in the next week or so, then we'll have to have placeholders and those sort of things. And we've got to get the budget done. We're very close. It's not a tough one. It's not, like I said, it's not a big municipality. It's not like doing Vancouver's budget. But it's like I said, it's 80 to 90% there, just to confirm it. And Joe, are you getting anywhere on that?
Yeah, so as far as the budgeted figures for just general operations, I think those are basically there. I've been coordinating with fire, parks and public works on the operational items. We've got some placeholders in there for the current amount of CapEx for the various departments. There are some requests coming in from fire, and then we're going to solidify what the actual plan is going to be for public works. But what is included here for the utilities reflects just kind of what we've done there for next upcoming year on the priority projects. And then I can talk about whichever one you like, but they are by department.
So what does operation include? Maybe better questions, what doesn't it include?
Could I, I'm sorry, could I back us up for just a
I'm
second?
sorry.
I apologize for interrupting you, but could I back us up for a second? I realized that two things. One is that we don't have a recorder today, and that we should actually determine specifically a recorder. And I believe you recorded in the previous ones. Did you? Or
I don't remember.
are you okay?
Joe, do you
record or?
Sure.
Okay, if Joe could be the recorder, I think just to formalize that.
Not for this. I don't think Rain goes in committees, but we do our own minutes for committees.
Oh, okay.
For committee. So Joe, if you could handle that, that would be terrific. And also I expressed past public questions and comments. So I'm wondering if I should back up and see if there's anyone looking for public questions
I
and
don't
comments.
think you do that at the meeting though, do you? You do that in a council meeting. You do public participation in committees other than attendance?
We
Yeah,
have time.
it's encouraging.
Yeah.
Sure.
Sure.
Do you do it before or after or just?
With that, it's before, yeah.
All right.
And then typically there's a opportunity for comment at the end.
Hey, can I just have one comment then, since it's
Sure.
sort of Joe was halfway there?
Yeah.
What I'd like to be able to do by the end of next week is send you the preliminary budgets. So you can think about it before our meeting rather than me hitting you with it.
Thanks.
I just have to find out what I can send you.
Right.
What I will not send you is details in relation to payroll. And anything that we believe is sensitive.
Right.
Joe, can you make sure we don't forget that?
But we would get, call it an anonymized version of what the overall budget, including all of the overtime and accrued this and that payroll, vacation and so on. Is that right?
I don't know. I don't think
A
so.
rolled up number, because we eventually see the rolled up number anyway.
You'll definitely see the payroll.
Yeah,
Will you see it? You'll see it by department.
That's fine.
Say Public Works is 320,000 this year, 280 last year.
that's
And you
fine.
can ask why it's up or down.
Yeah,
I
we
just
don't need to
can't-
see names.
Exactly.
And that's fine. Yeah. That's what I meant by anonymized or aggregated is probably a better word.
It's a legitimate question for you to ask is how much overtime do you pay percentage wise?
Well, that's really the bigger question is when you talk about payroll, there's payroll can mean a number of different things. So I'm talking about a gross
So we agree on.
version of payroll.
So I just have to make sure I can send you this.
Yeah, that's fine.
Kind of the rules of the road seem to be, we can't ask people related questions. We can't ask probably legal questions.
You can ask anything finance related. Anything to do with the accounting and the numbers, just the general terms of payroll. It's up 3%, it's up 4%.
Yes.
Hopefully we'll tell you, we don't have a collective agreement yet. That's out of our control. And we can tell you where we are staffing wise.
Great. Okay.
Okay.
Relative
Thank you
to,
very much.
there are no hands up right now, so you may want to just ask for hands or we can move forward.
So yes, at this point in time, I'm moving back to item number 3, which is public questions and comments. If you do have comments, I'd just like to apprise everyone that our municipal advisor was very clear that with questions, comments, and so on, his suggestion was that we do have a very specific set of guidelines, which are maximum of 10 minutes, maximum of 2 minutes per person, and that it be questions or comments for up to 2 minutes. If we're able to respond, we will. If not, we'll defer to a later time, but that definitely we would stay within the limited time structure. So with that understanding, if there's anyone who would like to make a comment, let's look for hands at this point. Give you about 10 seconds to find that button. Okay, appears that there's no comments at this point. There will be an opportunity at the end of the meeting if you do wish to make a comment. And this meeting
Michael, my hand is raised.
will be entirely open.
Michael, can you hear me?
Your hand up.
My hand was raised.
Praise now.
Oh, it's raised now.
It's up now, it wasn't before.
Well, it was. It's raised for a while, but anyway, maybe your screen's not displaying properly.
Could be.
Can you
Okay,
hear
go
me?
ahead. Mr. Abbott, you have 2 minutes.
Yeah, I don't need 2 minutes. Simple question. The agenda package online had nothing other than the one-page agenda on it. I see a lot of paper in front of everyone in the meeting room. Is that package going to be available to residents online? And could you tell us what you're looking at?
I'm actually looking at the budgeted material that was provided to the last council meeting. Pardon me. So it's all public information. It's the draft.
So the only information that's available is what was provided in the last council meeting. Is that correct? You guys have muted yourself. We can't hear anything you're saying.
The materials that I'm looking at, as I said, are we muted again? No?
No, you've just come back online now. Okay, so just repeat
Okay, no,
that. You've
I'm
just
sorry.
come back on.
Just said the message said we were muted. I'm sorry. What I'm looking at the moment is the materials that were provided in the agenda package of April the 4th regarding the draft water, solid waste and sewer budget.
Okay,
That's
so
the
there's
materials
no
that I'm looking
additional
at.
information provided to the committee at this meeting other than what was provided to council in the last council meeting, correct?
It's just more explanations on these.
There will be more explanation of that. I heard Mr. Miller say. So, okay. Thank you very much. Any other comments?
Don't see any here.
Don't see any hands. Okay, thank you very much.
So if it works for you guys, what I'll ask Joe to go through is these. We did this actually last time, not really changed, but we're trying to get it through the readings, first 3 readings this Tuesday, tomorrow.
Mhm.
And so Joe can go through the budget and tell you what the changes are, give you a refresher on these budgets, then ask any questions you like.
Oh, great. So I'm looking at the draft water budgets. The probably the way I stated with the solid this for you. So the draft water budgets, you'll see in the top line there for water user rates, the budgeted amount is the same as last year. We're not proposing an increase in user rates for water. And then you'll see that in the note 2 on the second or note 1, I should say. Note 2 for maintenance. We're budgeting $56,000 less than last year. That is last year's budget included $25,000 for condition assessments and $30,000 for cleaning of 3 water tanks at Harvey, Magnesia, and Highway. These projects were completed last year at a significant discount as they were performed in conjunction with the districts of Squamish and Whistler. 25K of that for the condition assessment was not completed and has been rebudgeted. So it was included in operations last year, wasn't spent, and so we're including in operations this year.
So Joe, what wasn't done last year that was supposed to be done?
The 25K for the condition assessment.
So last year was more like 150,000, not 170.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And 114 is lower than any of the 3 years that we're being here.
Yes, and so that was another developed in conjunction with Public Works. Just based on what they'd actually experienced last year and what their operations budget is for the current year, or the projects they intend to complete. For sure, it's knocked down 30,000 for the cleaning of the 3 water tanks, which was completed and paid for. That's contributing about half of the decrease from the prior year. When you look at the 2022 actual, it was 123,000. And then we're budgeting slightly less for the current year.
Do we know why the condition assessments weren't done?
I can ask, I just know that they weren't done.
So you're meeting with the Public Works Manager. And that'll be a question for him?
Yeah, so
Yeah,
I will add some more color to give the explanation of too as to why that was not performed that prior year.
okay.
I see insurance, my favorite subject, up 23.8%. Is that the result of claims or just rate increase?
Ratings. They told us what their policies would be and they just went up.
So it was what, sorry?
It's just the policies they've already given us,
Yeah,
everything is up. Wow, that's what we will give you.
okay, thank you.
Wow.
Everything is up.
It's a big number. It's a big percentage. I know the numbers, but yeah. 23%.
Yeah, there's something.
And then the other piece, Joe, if you wouldn't mind just describing your note 3 regarding the pro services.
Sure. So last year we had budgeted rock slope remediation for $40,000. Last year's actual was only 21 grand, so we rebudgeted a portion of that in the current year. There was a hydrology study that was budgeted last year for $12,000. We're building up that fund 10,000, 12,000 a year, and then now going to go to add another $2,000 each year to that fund. There was a 22 budget for the Upper Bayview water main for $54,000. There's $10,000 that's re-budgeted for that, but the remainder had been spent. And then we're adding an engineering assessment for filtration avoidance in the 2022 budget for $20,000. General contract services, we budgeted 10,000 last year, and we actually spent 51,000. I need to follow up with Naya as to why we spent overspent on the budget for that line item. But we're budgeting, but we budgeted last year for the 10,000. I did speak with Naya and said that's probably what we should be. So I'll get some more detail on why the actual for 2022 was over budget. Then water testing is basically the same as last year. Overall, for
Sure, it's 2022 actual, this is 128,751. But here it's 79,048. Something mixed in there.
possibly, I can double check that.
The engineering of, where are we here? My lining this up properly. Okay, Upper Bayview water main survey and design. So that's, I'm a little bit confused as to why that's an operating expense or that's a more capital expense.
The survey design cost was included in the contract services and it's an operating expense item.
Oh, okay, but that will ultimately, I mean, we're looking at fairly significant projects this year.
Oh, yeah, the capital budget is a lot higher than this guy, getting a contractor to go in there. Survey it, but to actually do.
To inform the design, okay.
And I think, Michael, it's a good question. I think the 49,703 is capital expenditure. Because if I take that out of the 128,751,
Yeah,
then it equals 79,403.
okay,
Sorry, 048. So I think it's capital.
so it is more, yeah, okay, thank you.
And it's 10,000 missing in the 2023 budget. That's just general expenditures. Here it's 82,000, here it's 72,000.
Yeah. At some point, you might want to look into the systems that are creating these, but so just a comment, really nice to see professional services, contract services come down by 35%. That's the kind of thing that we've been asking. When I say we, I mean the gallery has been asking for. And part of the reason that the gallery or me in particular were asking for that kind of change was that if you look at 2020 and 2021 at 20,000 and 16,000. And then in 2022, we jumped to 80. And then the budget was actually 100, quite a bit more than the 80 that was actually spent.
Mhm.
That was something that we were saying, hey, where's all this money going? And we weren't really getting great answers. So it's nice to see it going back in the direction of the previous years. Just thought I'd mention that this looks like fresh water here, Ron.
It is.
Yeah.
Lions Bay water. It's
It's good.
it's
It's still, it has the same.
beautifully clear and
Right. Okay. Anyway, so that's just kind of a general comment. I'm seeing things, there's a lot more reduction, even though general costs are becoming higher, like the insurance number. But, the overall number is coming down. That's the kind of responsibility that we're hoping for.
Ron, one of the things you mentioned, and as a Kelvin Grove resident, I like the idea you were talking about, we're going to start putting money aside for future maintenance and servicing of that sewage plant. I'm probably in here. Is that built in there anywhere?
Is that
that's in the sewer.
yeah, different, we're getting
Different budget.
Okay,
This is.
but that idea of still going ahead of putting an assessment for Kelvin Grove people,
Yeah, it's still in there.
that's still excellent. Okay.
It's still there. Hasn't changed.
So in terms of infrastructure and our concern for infrastructure and having money for infrastructure, we're talking about operating here versus the actual capital.
Well,
needs, right?
not necessarily, no, you still have 352,000 of capital expenditures,
Okay,
and that's in note number 5.
okay.
Well, I think you'll have 49.
Yeah, the 47's in there, that's rebudgeted from last year, so those were. No, so that's the reservoir, the quality study. 10,000 for it wasn't spent last year, so that's still gonna be budgeted for the current year. So the ones from new things from Public Works in Captain's note 5 is a survey design. Road on Ocean View for 50,000, survey and design for the water main on Creekview Place, that's the 135,000. Survey and design for the water main in Highview Place for 40,000, and then 80,000 for SCADA, which wasn't spent last year, so we're expecting to spend it in the current year. When I was speaking with Nye on the survey and design, he mentioned that usually there's some questions of why did we have to do this, and he mentioned that in order for us to apply for grants or getting sort of funding from the government, and you can just figure out and get a quote for a contract, we need to do the survey and design work to assess the scope of the project. So that's why he's included these numbers for water. And he's come from his draft capital budget plan.
So the 80,000s are rebudgeting.
Yeah, it's a rebudget from last year. We didn't spend the SCADA last year.
I'm sorry, what the hell does that mean?
I didn't know what it was.
Okay.
It's the control system. Basically, it's.
Yeah. So they couldn't spend it last year. Yeah, thank you for reminding me. Also, so they couldn't actually get it in. They couldn't purchase the system last year because of the global shortage in electronic parts like chips. And so they just physically couldn't buy it. That's why.
Technology.
It's more so about data collection is really the hardware that's needed to do that.
For water, what many of the questions you follow up on regarding to water changes or audits?
Can we go through the other? Number 4.
So 4 is related to a small increase over last year's budget. This is the salaries and benefits. I believe you spoke with Nye on this one. So what the prior budget, actual is less than budget, as 2 parks, public works employees had resigned. Also, there were in the budget for last year, they were going to hire 2 summer students. Parts of their salary were going to allocate between parks, water, and what have you. That was not incurred in the prior year. In the current year, the budget cost is last year's actual plus 2%, or budget cost going up by 3% based on the anticipated collective agreement negotiations, just on base salary rates.
But they are still understaffed, correct?
Yes.
So why would we expect the budget to be higher than actual for 2022?
That's for the base rate increase and then expectation that they have to hire somebody to actually fill those positions.
They haven't yet.
Not yet.
So if they budgeted, say, 381 last year, they did 351. How could we possibly get to 383 for this year?
Well, if there's nobody running, doing the work, presumably you're gonna have a higher overtime component. You're gonna end up paying for it at some point because the work has to be done.
Okay. Five, we did number 6. The rebudgets. How come in number 7 doesn't have the 80,000 the rebudget?
It's gonna be, that's kind of sitting in the capital expenditure that we moved.
You don't move it down, it implies you're taking from, because you want to take from the surplus, not from new money.
So, yeah, I wanted to, that's one thing that I wanted to have a chat with you about, just on the presentation of a couple of these things.
Okay.
But we can table that for and can chat about it. So that, yeah, there's, as far as presentation, there are a couple of questions how it's been done previously. And I think
What's the question around the 80,000 in the SCAD 80,000, and whether that should be in
I would expect to see it down below the rebudgeting. That's like a new capital expenditure.
I see. Okay, that's why we're having the meeting. That's great.
Oh, it's regarding the communications expense, it's up budgeting $11,000. So the prior budget included costs for Shaw internet to connect to the magnesium plant, the underground conduit, and then internet for the SCADA. And the current year budget, it seems actual with a little bit of an increase. It's discussed with the NI and the cost. So last year's actual is $11,085. The 2020 budget is $11,075. But it's a hard cost. It's going to happen every single year. Yeah, that's going to be your baseline going forward, plus any sort of inflationary amount that they charge us. That's what it's going to be.
So overall revenue is $4,000 up. That's all to do with the aging.
Yeah, that's a non-cash item.
Yeah. Expenses are down 80,000. So we're eliminating the deficit and not increasing the rates. The capital expenditures are up.
Covering capital expenditures in the current year. Again, we're going to talk a little bit about if we street some capital or rebudget. I just want to address for that presentation. That being said, the majority of the CapEx is being drawn from certain previous year's surpluses. 2020 had a surplus of 1.2 million. 2021 had almost $400,000 that surplus on a cash flow basis. And last year's year to date, we had a $200,000 surplus.
So it's almost break even.
Yeah.
We will be break even, regardless if you call it rebudgeting or capital expenditures, we're completely break even with $77.
Yeah, and we're funding the capital expenditures on, as far as this budget looks like, on surplus cash surpluses from prior years.
Is there? So the question asked now is large capital expenditures needed next year and year after Because what happens if you don't do any increase today and you ask for a big one next year,
Mhm.
people are upset. So do we need that sinking fund approach?
Thinking. Yeah, so basically what we've included as far as capital expenditures here is like, a lot of that survey design. And rebudgeting stuff from last year, the SCADA thing, which we didn't pay for last year, but we're gonna pay for this year, hopefully. The large projects weren't included. They're included in this 5-year capital budget draft so far. But we haven't had a meeting about the approval of the capital budget. So once we can calculate that, then you know these numbers may change, but the capital budget, like Ron mentioned,
Isn't finalized.
yeah, it needs to be.
Yeah. So in terms of, I wasn't quite clear in terms of, this budget will be brought to the April 18th meeting and the capital budget brought to the one following that?
Well, the capital budget for the utilities will be here,
Yeah,
not infrastructure budget, but just
Right.
normal operating capital.
right.
But for the overall will be 2 weeks down the road.
But the overall.
Soon we get the
Okay.
answers this week.
But this one will be, can come to the two tomorrows.
Yes,
Yeah, because I think everyone's getting anxious to get the billings out
exactly.
and get the utilities bills out as soon as possible.
So what we need to confirm, so from the committee's perspective, assuming there's no large capital expenditures in the next couple of years that we got to build up for, does this make sense? The numbers make sense?
These two, what I don't see is the rest of the budget though. You know, all the rest of the operations.
Yes, and that I'm hoping to get you by the end of next week. But this is just to get the utility. It's a very,
Utility side, yeah.
very isolated operations. All they do here is allocate some of the public works salaries and everything is very defined.
So just looking at, basically, we're coming in at less than last year. Are we talking about a more or less as is
Yes.
utility budget for?
Yes. Yes. But again, we just need to confirm with Nye that there's nothing big planned.
Yeah, yeah.
Within this.
Just the.
They're within this piece, okay. Are you comfortable with the numbers, the staffing allocations to the various budgets? I'm assuming that staff time is allocated by either by percentage or is it done by the timesheets or how do we know what is water, what is sewer, what is the various?
Yes, there's
breakdowns?
a labor costing spreadsheet
Okay,
that has every person, how much they make. Like, we'll call it technician 1, technician 2.
right,
You would have lost a technician 2, so when you have to say, take 2 technician 1s, one will be at different rates. And then percentage allocating to each department.
Okay.
So for example, 60% goes to public works, 20% goes to water.
And on their time sheets, they do bill their code to which department they're working for. So
okay,
when we do payroll, we'll see on the time sheets that are approved by the public works manager, the time allocations between departments.
okay, great.
The timesheets are very detailed.
Oh, that's great to know, okay. Because we did have a question from, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. No, we'll see with the depth with the, you know, now there's more than just water. It's garbage.
They're on there. Sewage, waste,
And
water.
Yeah, and the sewage is sewage, waste and water. Okay, so it's not garbage.
No, I think it's the plant.
Okay, I somehow thought it was, but.
We'll be talking about garbage as well. Okay, that's a later budget.
Oh,
There's 3 budgets. There's the 3 budgets, right? There's sewer, water, and then there's sewer, which is.
Yeah.
South Road.
yeah.
There's no sewer.
Yes, no, you're right. It is.
And then the garbage, which is
Mhm.
garbage and recycling.
So those are presumably fixed price contracts with the people that run around or
Correct.
those numbers aren't going to change then?
And there is a couple changes in there. I remember talking about that. So I think Joe will bring it up.
Oh, I'm jumping the gun. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No, you're right. We are going to that.
It's better to see the whole overview, yeah.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
But the garbage contract is up for negotiation next year, so, but right now it's fixed into next year. That's my understanding, yeah. So I coughed through my last point. I'm sorry.
I got a dry throat as well, I understand. Would you like to look at the ground sewer budget?
Just before we do, just a small point, but what is internal allocations, the last line item
Right.
on the water? On sewer as well.
That's a fair size number.
Exactly the same budgets and actual each year.
Oh, it's I will have to double check. I don't have a note. I've never had it. Foggy memory. There's it's just it's kind of like a labor cost between like admin and different departments. But I have to double check that.
That's a good question, because it's a big number.
It's never.
It's the same number every year. The water budget, you look at the water one?
Internal.
Water, 75 grand. Then 4 grand in sewer, and it's 9 grand in solid. So it's gonna be the same explanation for all three, but just let me verify how that program for you. I can make another note for you for the next.
Thanks.
Just to finish off my question though about the timesheets and so on, there had been a question from a gallery a couple of years ago, I guess, about timesheets, and the answer at that time was that the timesheets that they didn't have a lot of time to do the timesheets. And so I was fairly concerned about that. So I'm very happy to hear that the timesheets are now being described as quite thorough. So that's great.
Oh, yeah.
Because we weren't sure what, would like to know that the allocations for labor into this budget are pretty close.
Oh, yeah, no, and as Ron mentioned with the labor costing tab, that kind of drives everything as far as public works, all the various departments. And there's only like 14 employees, right? So it's not rocket science, but in conjunction with the very detailed time sheets by hours incurred for each department on that activity. We have the rates, as Ron mentioned, like Tech 2, Tech 1, the rates there. You've got the public works managers a salary in there, and then he's mentioned that year to year it may fluctuate between departments depending on where people actually bill their hours,
Sure.
or how much overtime they need to incur. And I would expect there's going to be some more overtime this year because they're short staffed.
Sure.
Yeah, it's a quite a detailed worksheet, and I've went over with that in detail with that.
Fabulous. Okay. Thanks very much.
Wait. How much the review, I don't know.
Talk about process as well.
Yeah, let's talk about that one. No, let's not talk about processes, because I don't have my head yet around all the processes. And who actually, it's a nice looking working papers, like a timesheet, but who goes through it.
Okay. That's a good, is that a good question for the finance committee and for
Yes.
finance and audit committee?
Yeah, because they want to be
Answer that
comfortable,
question.
they're comfortable that the costs are being allocated properly. David pointed out, it sounds like somebody said let's charge 55,000. Well, how's that determined? I don't know.
Where did the number come from, right?
So, but I like the summary I gave. We're not, unless something has come up in the next 2 years that we don't know about. There's no reason to increase rates for current expenditures.
But I'm always kind of the guy looking forward to, I always want to make sure we're putting budget aside for a rainy day. Yeah.
You're dead wrong.
And we definitely are going to have expenses. The whole infrastructure discussion is.
Right, that's
Huge.
what's not here, right? It's
Yeah,
Yeah.
the next couple of years is one thing, but the next 15 is.
it's really, we have to look at. But in terms of moving forward and getting this budget going, I
Yep.
think it's really urgent to
Yep.
get the billings out. I mean, we have almost $1 million in billings that would last year have been in already. March 31st was the deadline. So, and I think we got almost, well, maybe half of that, maybe $500,000 in already in income. So
Like people are
we
paying,
haven't billed it yet.
people are paying without having been billed or?
Last year, I'm saying last year.
Oh, I see.
Oh,
at this time.
By this time last year, we had collected the
I get it.
bulk of that.
Yeah.
But it's a cost of the fact that things got so far behind, so, which is too bad, so, but that's fine.
You want to jump in? Sewer or what you want to do next?
Yeah, let's just start. So it's a one pager here. Main difference for this year is that we're proposing a 5% increase in the utility fees and rates for sewer. Parcel taxes are remaining the same as last year. Parcel taxes relate to the amounts charged for the residents that actually have access to sewer. The village paid for the wastewater treatment plant is recovering these fees from residents that use the sewer system as parcel taxes. This was a resolution to levy that was approved in years by council. And then just as how you can see that if you look at note number 1 here, line parcel taxes, 98,606. That's what we're levying in parcel taxes. And at the very bottom, we're transferring it to reserves wastewater treatment plant, basically paying back the amounts of the incurred as a municipality expenses. Note 2 for materials. So the budget last year, or the budget includes $15,000 for CCTV of lines and $25,000 for pump outs of the treatment plant. Last year we had smoke testing for 10,000, came in about half of the price that was expected, so the actual is less than budget. Some reallocation of staff as well. The loggers lane repair moved 2 ops staff from sewer to public works for a month. So that contributed to a decrease in the actual from last year. And there was the 25K for the pump outs is a year amount. So you can expect that it was.
That happens every year then,
Yeah.
one time sort of
It's a
thing?
year-to-year amount every year.
Okay.
So the net increase is about 4,500, which is the difference between last year's 10K for the smoke testing and the 15K for this year that we're budgeting for the CCTV lines.
So they expect it to go down because of. They budgeted 39,000 last year. They came in at 31,000.
Yep.
Now they're budgeting 43,500.
So what happened last year, why it was down last year was the smoke testing was budgeted at 10K, came in about $5,000. So actual was down by 5K. And then the labor costs for labor in this account was less because they'd originally budgeted for 2 off staff were moved to public works for a month full time because they had some repairs on Loggers Lane that required an extra staff member. So they actually use more money in public works and less in sewer. So that's why it went.
So why would this one go up so high then? Why would it be 4,500 plus the 31,000?
So you'd look at so 31 plus 15 for the 31 plus 5, I guess, because the difference between 31 plus 10, so 41. You'd be about 41. So if you look at last year's actual at 31,000, that included, call it $5,000 for the smoke testing. And so the current year extra expense is $15,000 for the CCTV. So net those two is about 10,000 extra. So we're about 41,000 there, and then a little bit for extra for labor. And then note 3, that's that SCADA as well. So SCADA is total cost of $100,000 is split 80% between water and 20% between sewer. Again, like I mentioned before, that amount wasn't able to be spent in the prior year because they couldn't, because of the chip shortage, they couldn't actually buy that. So that's what I've got for sewers.
And so the
Sorry,
5%.
sorry, guys, sorry to interrupt, but I think there's someone in the waiting room.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Got 2 people in the room.
Okay. So we're looking at a 5% increase in sewer, and that basically is starting to build for repairs and ongoing maintenance, that sort of thing. That wasn't available when that thing broke down previously. Yeah. Okay.
I almost wonder whether that's enough, but I guess we got to start.
Well, it's a good point because you're dead on. It's break even other than the capital expenditure of $20,000. So
And I'm the guy that's gonna be paying it, but my fundamental nature is that we need something more there. Shit's gonna happen. Wow, that's. I can't believe I said that, but anyway.
Yeah.
Do we want to consider?
We've got people paying an extra allocation as well. They're paying a fee as well.
Mhm.
And then the 5%. So, yeah. But it could be. What are you thinking?
I mean, just because I experienced this, all of a sudden we found ourselves in scope and go, wow, we got to replace this. We got lucky. It was only $1 million, Initially, they were talking about being a hell of a lot more than $1 million, 30 or 3 million, 4 million, numbers like that. And I just wondered if it'd be be responsible to. And what does 5% really represent per house in dollars? I mean, this is what, 82,000.
from 78.
78, you've got 100 houses.
That's $4,000. Extra in total.
Well, you've got a hole of 20,000. That's only, it's not a big deficit. Because it looks like all surpluses have been wiped out over the last 3 years.
And the way I look at that, again, this is something I'm going to talk to you about just was presentation, but so in the last year's 2022 budget, the budgeted deficit was $18,000 after incurring the SCADA cost of $20,000 last year. We didn't spend it last year.
Mhm.
So what actually ended up happening was an increase in reserve, the sewer surplus of $21,000. So in the current year, we're hoping to spend that $20,000 for SCADA. That $20,000 deficit is going to basically is offset by this actual surplus from last year, but basically a net nothing.
So it's very big even.
Yeah.
So there's no deficit or surplus.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like when you put all the numbers together.
Yeah.
So I don't think you don't need it yet. Because you're gonna have if we look at a funded basis, you have a zero surplus or deficit at the end of the year of 2023.
So I'm not being argumentative, I'm just curious. So it has a life expectancy of 20 years or something. And in 20 years from now, are we going to have in 20-year dollars from now, $2 million in the bank or whatever? Are we building up a fund to take into consideration the ultimate demise that we have, not just the operating cost?
That's the infrastructure,
Yeah,
right?
I think that's a good question for infrastructure.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind.
Yeah, that's a longer term and it's part of, seeing these budgets are nice, but to be able to see the overall operating budget or, when it's reported out at the end of the year, it's called the statement of operations and it's got this and everything else on it. And then, looking at that with a lens on what infrastructure is going to require over a decade or more is really what council is going to need, I think, in order to really get through the budget. Right. And I think what you're saying now is that there's no short-term plan changes to the infrastructure plans. But I think in the fullness of time, after the budget's done, a lot of people need to look into the infrastructure. That's no surprise. That's
Right.
I think we all know that there's work to be done there, serious work to be done there.
And we're not denying or deferring that in
Right.
any way by doing this. We're looking at getting this moving.
Getting this done, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Do have a question. How do we go on the maintenance line item? If you look at, 2020 might have been an extremely low year. But it goes up by, somewhere close to 10x in 21, a little bit more in 2022, and now quite a bit more in 2023. What's in that maintenance, and is that what's going to go in the future on that?
So in 2022, we had that that's when it started. It might have been 2021, but that's the pump outs, I believe, is the main difference there, the 25K that we're incurring annually. And then in 2022 was the extra 10K budgeted for the smoke testing. We're not budgeting for smoke testing in the current year, and we actually came in about half of our budget for smoke testing, but we are adding 15K for the CCTV.
So 25K now is a recurring expenditure?
Yeah, every year.
But it wasn't there before.
No, I will confirm with Nye that it started in 2021, because yes, I can see where it went from 3,000 in 2020, and then it jumps up by about 25K. But that is my understanding that the pump out 25K is going to be a recurring item going forward.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not aware of the operating, but was the unit actually rebuilt in 2020? When did that repair happen? 2020 or 2021? You remember? It was catastrophic failure and they had to be rebuilt. So I'm thinking it may not, any pumping that happened may not have been in this budget. That's my point.
Yeah.
That it would have been just part of.
I think
it's
at least 2020
You mean?
since we rebuilt it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, that's a question for now, I guess. Okay, but it is we know it's going to be 25K going forward.
To be confirmed.
Yeah.
To be, okay.
That's the information
We know
but,
that.
I will double confirm that. Solid waste.
Okay, that's good.
You just kind of agree though, other than your comments about
Yes.
looking forward.
Yeah.
You can get out of zero.
Solid waste also, we're participating at a 10 increase with a budgeted surplus of 10,000. Last year's actual surplus was 17,000. There are no discussed with Nye, Public Works Manager. There are no anticipated capital expenditures for solid waste in 2023. So that's why we're not increasing the user rates to build up any sort of CapEx fund for capital expenditures. Miscellaneous revenue, note 2, you'll see that the increase it goes up to $26,000, and that's included in a revenue from Recycle BC. You might have noticed the blurb in the village update from a couple weeks ago. We had a meeting with Recycle BC about how to better manage our recycling, but we get money from Recycle BC for our recycling efforts.
Nice.
And that number was based on, I believe we started it in September of last year. So from September to December, we had $7,600 in income from Recycle BC. And so we basically just extended that over a full year to get to the $26,000. So you'll see 3 line items with note 3, and that's for recycle removal, green waste contract, and salaries and benefits. They're all increasing 5%, just based on discussions with Nye. The costs are going to increase by 5% in 2023. We're going to RFP for a new contract to start in September. So aside from that, that's just kind of the number we picked as far as like inflationary costs and what we're going to see on our invoicing coming from outside providers.
What's that contract term?
I can check. I don't know what how long the contract is. Minimum a year I'd expect, but I can double check what the contract terms are.
It was extended, I believe, from last year, but I can't remember the actual numbers at the time. Yeah.
Last note there, number 4. So we spoke with Nye, so we're expecting a surplus of 10,000, depending on the level of air activity in the next year. But we could incur more costs relating to bears getting into garbage cans and what have you.
What's the actual expense there?
Yeah. Okay, so exactly. Yeah. Why would it go up?
So depending on the intensity of the bear season in 2023, additional funds may be required to address the resulting issues and plan to increase in service through the incorporation of extended recycling options at the works yard being contemplated by the Climate Action Committee. They're anticipating that the public works yard could be open on Saturdays to facilitate recycling.
So
I get it.
my guess is that salaries and benefits.
That would be for doing an extra day, Saturdays opening.
Yeah, so it would be all salaries.
Yeah.
So instead of $3,700, it could be double.
I get it.
You see that prompt payment discounts? That should be deducted from revenue, not expense.
Okay.
It's a separate line item. It's a bit of a budget surplus, but again.
Maybe not.
Maybe not because of what's going on.
And it's small.
So it's small. Doesn't take much to use it.
So. That's for utility.
So. That's the questions there.
I do have my notes, I'll address that at the next meeting. And that gets to be adding more information to the notes for each item as to some of the numbers that come from and it's more explanation of the history behind some of those stuff. So
What I find confusing on these budgets is it doesn't tell you what the actual surplus was from last year. We have to do the mental math to get there.
okay.
They don't show that normally, but I can't figure out why.
That's not the actual, in the actual column there?
No, that's a surplus for the year. And if you have a deficit for the year, you don't know what the surplus was in the prior year.
Oh, I see. You're getting a,
Do the math in your head and you're assuming like, you remember Joe made that comment, there's $700,000 surplus and $200,000 surplus. Well, you can't tell that from there, the way they do these budgets. Like,
good point.
Just the format that was done historically.
this previous format, I don't understand it. But everybody has their different ways of showing it. So if we could get the answers tomorrow. I'm trying to figure out how to get them to you because they're good questions. But they can always lead to more questions. I like to do the answers tomorrow. I just got to figure it out.
Sorry, what do you have to figure out?
Is there contemplated future expenditures in water, for example? What's the 55,000 allocation?
Okay, yeah, so getting it to us isn't the question. Getting the information is the question.
No, it's the other way around. I
Why?
can easily get the answers. I just don't know how to give it to you.
Why not?
And that's why I don't know. Let me find out. It's
Okay.
more of a policy.
Oh, okay. It's not, you can't do it. It's, yeah,
Easy, I'll have the answer in a minute tomorrow.
yeah.
Okay,
Just gotta figure out how to get it to you.
okay. And yeah, we have to find ways to melt all that
Exactly.
blockage down.
Yes,
All right.
How that information can be shared,
yes,
that question.
without waiting for the next committee meeting.
Mhm.
It's just more policy. I've got to think about how to.
Yeah, okay.
My other world, I just phone you up and say, or send you an email. I just don't know if I can do that.
Right.
Right, okay. Fair enough.
That's all we've got for this one. And they're good questions because they give us something more to think about when we do the bigger budget, because it's quite a lot bigger.
Right. And what do you call that? The general operation or something?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
But fire, parks and rec administration, all the other departments, we just want to get utilities process going so we can get.
Public Works is a big budget.
And what, you guys may not know the answer to this, and maybe from your experience with this, Michael, you might know, but part of this process is, okay, yeah, we got to get a budget down for the next 12 months. or this calendar year. Then there's the infrastructure. And is that on a rolling basis that's addressed? Is that addressed every year or is it every couple of years or?
Well, yeah, I think it's addressed in we have to do a 5-year budget, right?
We have a 5-year rolling.
5-year rolling.
There's like a 50, like long-term.
Okay,
Yeah,
it's that long-term plan that is, I mean, things can get kicked down the road for 5 years, but it's that 15-year one that,
When's the last time it was looked at?
15 years ago.
Neville, would you know?
I'll hear it at that point. Okay,
and then there's the infrastructure committee and getting, that
Sorry,
group.
guys, my mic was muted. Were you
No
asking
problem.
when the infrastructure master plan was done?
No, if it's a 15-year sort of a budget, it's a great budget. It'll be very broad, but do you remember the last time it was looked at?
I'm just familiar with our strategy sessions and our 5-year plan, that's sort of, as you said, a rolling plan. I didn't know there was a step back and different look at it from every 15
It must be a
years.
long range plan. We know there's a 5-year rolling plan because we do that. But are you aware of any longer term plan? Or is that part of your infrastructure committee?
I think the infrastructure master plan gives you the details of the long-term goal of CapEx issues.
Yeah, and when's the last time that was looked at?
7.
We're currently working with the one that was done, I'm going to say 2017.
It's only 5 years ago.
It was in that council anyway, and it wasn't right at the end.
Okay.
It
Yeah,
might have been earlier in that.
the council
Actually,
before.
you know what? It actually started in the previous council in 2014, but I can't remember the date of the plan, but it was sometime in 2016.
Yeah, it started in 2014 and I think it's 2016 maybe. 2016, 2017, Carl Burr was the mayor at that time.
So it needs to be relooked at.
It needs, yeah, well, the infrastructure master plan and how we're going to fund that and the whole thing, I think is all subject of a real discussion over the next couple of months, Neville.
My personal opinion is I wouldn't spend tens of thousands of dollars redoing the infrastructure master plan because I think the same goals still stand. I don't think that much has changed, other than the 1 or 2 items you've managed to knock off the list.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the priorities are still the same. You could have a short working session and decide whether anything has moved above something else in priority, but I don't think much has changed. I don't see why it would have. The pipes that were the oldest or closest to death 7 years ago are still the ones that are closest to death today because they haven't been replaced. So I
Are we
don't.
on target for that master plan though from 2017? Like, let's say next year.
We haven't done a fraction of what we need to do.
Okay, then I think that's what we have to look at.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could never ever come close to touching what's required without grants. You would be paying 5 times the taxes we pay, and we still wouldn't get there. It's a deficit that every municipality is dealing with. They've all done the same thing, starting in the 70s and 80s when everyone put infrastructure in and never maintained it. We're not unique in this. We're actually the same as virtually everyone else. But the problem is we can't afford to do it without grants. We don't have enough money, ever. So it's kind of tied up in getting grants. But we also need to find a way to chip away at some of the crucial stuff in smaller scale projects, in my opinion, rather than waiting for doing the design budget, grant application, refusal bust cycle that we seem to be stuck in.
Yeah, I agree.
That's a strategy session discussion, but you can never tax to fix the infrastructure master plan.
That's something the infrastructure committee and the finance committee has to look at. And they've got to start having a plan of where you spend the money. For sure.
Yes, infrastructure plan, we're looking at a grants committee, we're looking at the different kinds of things, as many different ways as we can to fund things, identify priorities.
So I shouldn't have joined your committee. But we have all sorts of other.
You're being asked as
we have
a
asset management
expert
strategy.
advisor, sir.
we have an asset management plan that we've been funding for the last 2 years. We got lots of information people need to go look at, and we didn't have a strategy session yet. That's the problem. So council hasn't even looked at it this year. This council hasn't even looked at it because we've had no strategy session.
I think that's one of the things our municipal advisor was going to lead us through was a strategy session right after the council is complete. So hopefully things can really start moving forward. Thanks, Neville. It's helpful. Okay, in terms of other questions?
Not for me at this point.
No.
Okay. I'm just thinking of, okay, so main budget, we're going to be talking about soon. Should we set a date for the next meeting, or should we wait until we?
No, we've got to
Make sure.
we need to commit.
Right.
So I'm gonna find a way to get you the budget by the end of next week. Draft budget,
So 2 weeks from today, we could be looking at it.
yes. So that way you've got some days to think about it,
Mhm.
and sometime the following week we'll get together.
Okay, so we won't we'll just say the week of.
Yeah.
Versus.
We have to commit to get you something by the end of Friday. What's today's Tuesday? No, today's Monday.
Today's Monday.
Let's say not by next, in early next week, we have to be getting you something to do with the budget.
Okay, and that's the week in between council meetings, so that's
Yes.
great. Okay, terrific.
And I'd also like to commit to at least giving you 3 or 4 days to look at it.
For sure.
If it's much bigger, it's small, right? No, it's not small.
Yeah, last
Then-
year.
Even if we give you the operation budget as opposed to the capital expenditure budget.
Could I just pick up on some things, like we didn't have business arising from the agenda, or from the minutes, I should say, but I'm just wondering if I could pick up on some things that we had talked about in previous meetings. For example, the banking. This committee originally got together as a result, was called on very short notice as a result of concerns about the banking. So are you feeling comfortable with the way that the accountability is now in place for banking?
So the procedures on the banking are extremely strong, and sometimes they're so strong I can't get in. And today I'm dealing with the bank because they're just today, I received an email from them saying they have some better options for us. So we challenged them, it's got to be a month ago now, saying we have to be getting better interest than a current account. So they just came back and they said they would look into it. So just today they said they want to meet with me and to determine here's some better alternatives. And you have to remember 0.5 of an interest rate on $5 million is a lot.
Yeah.
So they finally got back to us today. We were very concerned about signing authorities. And we have strong controls over that.
Or electronic as well.
Everything. Yeah, so it's just today it broke down. So it's go 2-step verification progress. The accountant will go in and set up the payments. I then have to go in to approve them. So the control, and it didn't happen before. So those procedures are in place.
So could I
Couldn't figure it
clarify?
out today though.
Can I clarify signing procedures? Because I think there's a lot of confusion that people are envisioning somebody signing a check and then walking it over and somebody else signing a check. So signing authority can also be a transfer of we had up to $50,000 a day able to be transferred by one individual. And so that,
Okay.
how can funds be transferred today in Lions Bay?
When you say transfer, you mean a check,
A payment,
Electronic.
payment.
electronic or payment or check writing, so that's the process is something is ordered in accordance with our purchasing policy, and it's called $50,000. That requires CAO and Public Works approval. That then is appealed, it's sent out, a check, the service is performed, the invoice comes back. The invoice is agreed to the purchase order. They are stapled together. A check run is made. I don't sign I have to approve the purchase order or sort of the check requisition. And it has to have whoever approved it on it with all of support. I then sign a check. And then a council member signs the check. So there's 2 signatures on every check and multiple approvals on every invoice.
Is some of that electronic, the council member? or-
Very little is electronic, but if it's electronic, I'll give you an example.
Subscriptions.
Yeah, something like that. They're very small though. Those have subscriptions, but wire payments for debt repayments, CRA, payroll remittances, WorkSafe remittances. And there's a few that some vendors like to be paid electronically, and we have no problem with that. But typically it's very small. There's some very big ones, but that's payroll remittances or debt repayment. Everything else is quite small. I would have thought in today's world there's more, but we don't have that much.
But they are all double
Everything's double.
requirements, yeah,
So somebody has to go in, set up the payroll, not the payroll,
payment,
the electronic funds, and only I can approve it.
yeah, good, okay.
So it's two people on each one. We're trying to change that, but it's a long-winded system for you to come in and do an EFT authorization.
Right.
But it's so little now, it's not, it's because it's payroll remittances, which comes right out of our accounting system.
That's gonna change.
We're
We've never even had checks in our company to sign.
You don't have checks?
There is no such thing as a check in our company, no,
No, we
never has been.
It's weird, and I agree with you. Here it's 80%, 90% are predominantly checks, 10% are EFTs. Why it's not the other way around, I don't know, but it's a lot of it's because of big contractors, 49,000, we're signing regularly checks, $49,000 for big projects. And why they aren't wire transfers, I don't know.
They should be. I mean, providing you get them down to $15 a month or per transaction. I mean, you don't want the expense. ACH is $1.50. And ACH can only go Canadian dollars, but it goes up to I think it's 49,000.
Yeah.
And then wires are next to no limit and they're $15.
Did you say that per check?
Yeah. And you might think $15 is a lot to pay for an electronic transmission.
I was, yes.
However, ask these guys what the cost of entering, printing, signing again,
Mailing,
putting it into an envelope, addressing the envelope, and then postage on the envelope, how much all that costs.
Fair point, fair point.
we had a study,
Aside from the amount of time wasting,
Yeah.
it's
we had a study in the Burnaby school system 15 to 20 years ago, and I think it was $82 a check processing by the time it went up and down. And
that's higher than the highest I've heard, but
hands.
I've always heard 50.
Well, that was maybe just that was the entire purchasing process,
Sure,
but
yeah,
It was-
50 or 60 is generally what, and it depends on obviously the cost of the people, but it tell you when you get it set up. And I spent about an hour setting up one company's, RBC has a new thing called Pay Edge. And it takes them a while to get it set up. It's ironic that we're talking about this today because I spent about an hour on that setup today, on the onboarding today. But once it's set up, it's like when you use your phone to send somebody $25 on EFT.
When I do EFT all the time with BMO, why don't we make a point of a study of why we're not doing it, what we can do to get more?
And your suppliers need to obviously prefer that, but when they do,
Maybe we're not asking them.
I'm telling them.
Yeah, that's.
I'm saying if you want to be my supplier, the only way I can pay you is electronically. And by the way,
like to be paid.
you're going to thank me for it.
Most of them are going that direction because they just give us their, they give their account, they have to give us their account number. And some small business may say no, because they think, oh, you can go in and take all my money. But we don't have that authority. We're just making deposits.
All the banks make it really easy. They'll print out a sheet
Yeah.
that you send to your supplier and say, here's my wire details. And it's just the transit, the bank, the transit and the account for Canada. And there's some other things that you need, SWIFT codes and things for US. But you get that all on the same sheet. And your bank will, you can find it on the website, print my wire details. And then you PDF that off to people and say, here's how you pay me. We actually include it in our invoices. So when you get an invoice, you get the payment as well. Payment method.
We're just not asking and telling.
When did you last write a personal check? I haven't written. My wife does most of the bookkeeping in our house, but I haven't touched a paper check in 5 years, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, businesses don't need to either.
Good question. Okay, let's make a point of that.
Well, the last half a dozen checks I've received, I've taken a picture of and deposited immediately, right? So.
You didn't tear it up afterward, did you? Because you're nervous. Go through and gets bounced.
It's true, yeah.
Save the picture in 2 places.
Safe, yeah, for sure. Okay, in terms of security and access to the to our systems. One of the things that came up in January was the fact that our server, where all our information is downstairs.
No, it's offsite.
And it's offsite?
It is offsite.
Okay,
That's made sure that it's held. There might be something local, but it's all in the cloud with See the Sky. We are just working with them. We had them come into the office last week.
Okay.
To give us a better understanding. There's new contracts coming up. No surprise, the fees are skyrocketing. So we're looking at those right now in the securities, but definitely ask that question.
Excellent. Okay.
Do you know if it's their cloud or if it's someone else's cloud, like a public cloud? Okay.
I doubt they're a server facility.
They're not that big.
Managed host.
Yeah, they're just managed hosting. I'm sure they're using Talos or somebody else.
What is See Sky, some like online management company or something?
They actually give very good service.
They could do all our,
I just don't know the last time we negotiated rates with them or sat down, because what we're very good at is anytime we can't turn on our screen or it's not the right tint, we phone them. And they charge by the hour. They used to charge per node, but they've gotten away from that. So some of the fees from them are very high. Just because it's so easy for us to phone them.
Yeah.
So we're looking at that right now.
on the monthly, quarterly payouts, there was, the numbers were significant.
Exactly. It's a lot higher than I thought it would be.
Yeah. It was in the, I can't remember,
It was like $3,800 a month.
3,800 a month. Yeah, I was gonna say
So we're starting to look at
3,000 to 4,000 a month. Yeah. Good.
And that's a lot. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I think there's a lot of technology that we need to look at in terms of, I was looking at the cost of the parking machines and then the cost of the software for the parking machines and the cost of operating. So anyway, but we need to much better understand that, which I think, as I understand, is one of the purposes of this committee as well, to ask those questions. So that's great. Okay. I asked about insurance earlier. Thank you very much. Auditors, we're facing the auditors soon. That was a question came up in the council the other day, I believe.
Is that started or is they about to start?
Oh, I haven't heard back. But when you received some communication from, I can't remember the partner's name.
All sorts.
Yeah, Paul. So he'd a meeting that was, I think, the day after I started. He responded to him and I responded to him as well to call me directly to get started on whatever they need. And I haven't heard back since. I'm not sure if he's waiting for communications with you or what, but I haven't heard anything. I can give him a call again. But it hasn't started. We have completed the interim audit. So about 75% of the year-end audit is complete up to October of last year. You're catching up on 2 months of information basically. We just need to get started on that. They were expecting to come in April 10th, but we just haven't had any communication.
Right.
So they're following.
Do we agree with the scope of the audit? That was kind of a discussion at some stage.
I believe so, yeah.
So that would have been done 6-8 months ago. As far as the scope of the audit, because they've already done their interim audit. We now just need to get through the audit. And see where we go from there.
Okay.
I have an idea of the fee because they quoted. I saw an increased invoice. But we don't have any flexibility, right? We got to get through it and then
you'll decide, or we'll decide if that's the standard we want going forward.
Yeah. Finance committee, we can talk about the fees. And the recommendations of how the audit went. And then it's a council to issue what we do next.
Okay, sure.
I don't know enough about how these auditors work out.
Do we have anybody on board who knows anything about audit that could advise us on?
We're both actually.
We have an expert on board who knows a lot about audit and who I would hope will guide us.
Yeah, once
Is
we,
how I should put it.
and we will have a pretty good idea of where they're at.
And maybe make some recommendations.
Yes, what I don't know is, and unfortunately, with all professional services, people get complacent.
Yeah.
They get a little bit too satisfied with us and we don't get the service. They get busy. And like, a bit of a surprise to me, they haven't got back to us.
Okay.
It's a big bill.
Okay. Looking at our agenda, we had a discussion of the utilities and annual budget processes. We've got timelines on that. Got a lot of new staff working on all of this. It's coming together. Sounds like it's coming together well, and yeah, great. Okay. Getting the support you need.
Finance committee is tough to deal with.
Yeah.
I think you should get a 5-minute meeting, just say, yeah, go with it.
Okay, yeah, go for it, right? Yeah, the municipal advisor has come in and is kind of looking at everything that we're doing. So, and I think he's going to make some great suggestions. So
The only,
he's
Joe and I, the accounting world, the finance world is second nature to us. What's new to us is how you account for capital expenditures, rebudgeting, transfers of surpluses. And it's not difficult, we just got to get our head into it. And we do have an advisor who's going to help with us.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
It's
that was
more
a
of a
recommendation.
recommendation than anything.
The advisor has suggested a specific advisor right at this point. Yeah, I think that's going to council tomorrow night. Okay, great. That was the support, I guess I was thinking of there. Discussion of utilities and annual budget to date, done it. Recommendations to council, I
just got a couple of other quick questions.
Sure.
In line with some of the ones that you're coming back to. I think I heard somewhere that we don't have the union contract done yet. And we're quite a bit behind on that.
For 2 years, I think, a year and a half, 2 years, 2019.
I don't know what the implications of something like that are, but why do we not and when will we? Is it something that we should be doing?
So I meet in the union 24th, whatever that day is.
And it's a Monday.
It's a Monday.
think so.
They have some concerns. They have some big concerns. The bargaining, we will sign off. The bargaining is done by another unit, another local. So we follow the coattails of, is it North Van or West Van?
It's likely West Van, but I don't know for a fact. Yeah.
So we budget for the increases and we're saying 3%. That's what we hope.
But we're not actually hammering out the deal.
No, we just follow along. Very small. To be negotiated.
Yeah.
I think they told me we're their smallest local. Or bargaining unit.
Okay, is that in this budget?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So that's what Joel alluded to. He said if salaries went up 3%, but adjusted for overtime.
That's assuming the union contract comes in at that. Okay, that's what that was really.
Because there'll be retroactive pay, right?
Pardon?
There'll be retroactive pay.
Yeah, okay.
As well, yeah. It's looking at, okay.
And then the only other question, when you were talking about the IT, so a company manages all of our IT, one throat to choke, so to speak.
Yeah.
If anybody wants to get access to our servers, our email, any of the accounts, there's a login, right? And are they logging those logins? Is there a report that could be provided that says these are all the people that have hit the Lions-based servers?
Good question. Joel, find that out.
Mhm.
I've never asked for it.
And the reason is that there's just been a lot of people who have left recently. And I think it's worthwhile for everyone, just ensuring that, I mean, what some companies actually do is they will go to the server and make it so that none of the old passwords work and we start from scratch.
So since I've been here, before somebody was terminated or left, I was on the phone with Sea to Sky saying, ensure this person no longer has access effective 5 minutes
Okay,
because of those issues.
got it.
If people are disgruntled, they can do bad things.
So then the way to look back on that is just ask for a report for all the logins in the last, I don't know if you want to do a month or two or some period of time. And then you're going to get a line item and you'll look through it and make sure that everyone's accounted for.
Because we're very concerned about security access. Their systems, the payroll systems, doesn't matter what the system, banking.
Mhm. Email.
Email as well, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, great. Any other questions? I think the protocol would be that we would open for any questions or comments from the gallery. If anyone wishes to make a comment, again, my note earlier on was we had a 2-minute limit on questions. Anyone want to put up their hand, or everything's been crystal clear to this point? Okay, I'll give you.
Yeah, I got a question. It's Marcus here.
Hi, Marcus.
Hi. Ron, you had said that you will be getting an advisor to help you and Joe become more conversant with the municipal side of the budget process. Do you have an idea who that would be or how that will come about?
We'll know more tomorrow night. I have an informal one I can use now through the ministry. I haven't called this person yet, but tomorrow night we're getting recommendations.
Okay, so those would be the recommendations that we as a council might have been getting and discussed previously.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Marcus. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Anything further? And we call for adjournment.
Appreciate it. Just want to say I appreciate all the questions because when you follow trees, you don't see the forest.
Right.
Like the 55,000, that's just a good question. And it's the same number every year. So you don't think of looking, what is it? Hell's internal allocation, right? So I appreciate your questions. We're never shy of tough questions.
We'll have to think of really tough ones for next time. Perfect. Okay, so adjournment then at 5:31. Thank you very much for the minutes, for doing the minutes. Thanks, Joe. Okay, and thank you for joining us in the gallery.